Hi everyone, so I wanted to make this video because I'm actually celebrating my 30th birthday this Saturday, and it's a little bit weird because my birthday is actually on January 2nd and I'm celebrating in October. The reason why we did that is because Addison's 30th birthday was actually in June and my 30th birthday is in January, and we thought like, oh, October is like right in the middle, and frankly June is just too hot and January is just too cold. So I always like to celebrate birthdays at somewhere outdoors, a little bit more fun, and I never get that luxury because it's the winter time and the only thing you can do is indoors, and sometimes I just want to have like a nice backyard kind of patio event, and that's what we're doing. So I thought a great video for me to do is actually lessons I learned in my 20s. I'm going to do 5 lessons that are personal and 5 lessons that are professional. These are things that I like really thought about, and I'm going to give stories for every single one of them, like why I think it's something that I thought was like the takeaway for the decade I lived in, and maybe the story about like why I learned this lesson in the first place. The very first one is personal. This is the time to take risk, do it scared. And if you know me in my personal life, I'm a very anxious person. A lot of things that I do are driven by fear or driven by anxiety, not necessarily like a lot of people think like, oh, Christine, you must have like amazing dreams and hopes and goals and all that, and you're like so fearless. No, I am not. But if you really know me, like the drive of not failing actually is the reason why I succeed most times. But to get over that hurdle, I sometimes break down because of the risks. So one really big one was when I was moving from Accenture to Google. One of the big things was like, do I want to leave my nice job at Accenture? I liked it. There was nothing wrong with it, to be honest. The only thing was really just provincial of I didn't really want to do Workday, but everything I did I liked, and the compensation was okay. But then I didn't realize like how much better it was. So when I started interviewing, I realized like, oh, there's a lot. Okay, this ended up being like a professional listen as well, but honestly, a lot of times like my fear does come from professional and they do trickle down to my personal. And I'll give you a personal story of this as well. But for the professional piece of it, it's really just like I did not know if I wanted to be Accenture for long term. I thought this was great. I thought this was how it was. But my friend Sally at the time was like, you need to do this because you're in your 20s. This is the time to do it when you have literally only one job in your resume, and it was Accenture at the time, and you have no bills to pay, no mortgage at the time to pay for. So this was the time. So I was at Accenture, and I actually decided to move towards a new job. At this time, this was just me like, I'm gonna just passively send out the feelers out there on LinkedIn or apply to ones that I think I'm interested in, but I wasn't actively doing it. Then when I realized like, okay, there's actually some roles that are showing up in my LinkedIn that I think is worth it, I started applying actively. And I did a lot of interviews. This is the part where I'm like, I like to take risks, but I also like to hedge my risk. Like, I don't know if I want to make a career jump if I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to like it in the first place. So I did a lot of informational interviews on if I'm going to like it in the first place. I reached out to a lot of people that left Accenture. I left a lot of people that went into roles I was interested in just to see if it was a fit for me. In the end, I ended up going to Google, as you already know. So yes, do it scared. Be informed. I don't think anxiety should drive the decisions, but you should at least be cautious and be aware and be prepared. I think the biggest thing is really just be prepared. That is something I will always be, but it's just a matter of how prepared do I need to be for me to feel comfortable to make that jump. That's the part that I've always struggled with, and I still kind of struggle with, but I do now. At least like I do it scared. I do it while hedging my risks and making sure I have plans in place. The second one is if you make a big mistake, you can find a way. I think this is the part that every time I do something really big and risky, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to fail and I can't get back from this. It's going to be very difficult. A lot of times this is just something where it's like, honestly, failure in my case, like to be able to complete whatever I'm trying to do. I have no regrets on how I do things. It's just a matter of, does it live up to what I'm trying to do? Like a lot of times my biggest mistakes are really just I'm putting in all this effort for it not to be recognized in the way it was meant to be. A lot of times it's just like the things I value is just not what other people value, unfortunately. And those are generally mistakes that I make, and I have to, and I'm going to talk about this in the professional side, but play the game. But like when it comes to making a big mistake, a lot of times it really is just like a different perspective. It's not necessary. I did not talk about this really publicly, but there have been some videos that I made that people thought were insensitive. I personally did not think they were insensitive, but I do see their point. I had to change some titles, I had to change some videos, I had to take some videos down. So those were mistakes, and in the end, you can find a way. I really was scared at the time because I was like, oh my God, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to get onto an improvement plan of some sort? Am I going to constantly just be essentially like never get promoted for this reason? Unfortunately, like that's just the game that like sometimes you just have to worry about the perception. And but yeah, that was like a mistake of mine. I don't think it's a mistake. I just think they were just being a little too cautious. A little bit too cautious, okay? Because I like when I put the facts in, they're like, why are you looking at things that were here before then? When it's not something I did actively. So I'm gonna just stop it from there before I get more in trouble. Then the third one was don't spend so much time thinking, do more doing. And this was honestly something that I learned pretty early on when I was starting my YouTube channel. A lot of times I was like, oh my God, I wish I did this. I want to do that. I need to improve on this. And at a certain point I was just like, you know what, F this, I'm just gonna do it. And then if I fail, I fail. I'm gonna just put it up online. And whenever I've done a collaboration, I've actually realized this is the part that's really different from me, is that like I literally don't give a shit. And a lot of times like that actually is what comes in my favor, because it means I come off more natural. There were some collaborations I worked with where they looked more scripted, they looked more robotic or like instructional, and that wasn't the vibe I wanted to be. The vibe I wanted to be was like natural, like I'm talking to you as if it's a coffee chat, like as if I'm like not recording something, as if I'm talking to you one-on-one. That is the vibe I want to do. So at a certain point, I just started doing what I want to do, and I did not care what people thought about. I did not care if like, oh, maybe only one person in the entire world will benefit from this. And actually, this is where I also diversify my content a little bit. At first, I always thought it has to always be technology consulting, but I don't want to hate the work that I'm doing. So I also inject some things that I like to do, like personal finance, travel, lifestyle, even like my pets and everything. I just did it instead of just thinking. At a certain point, it just becomes natural of like thinking of the rationale of why I do this or how I inject educational pieces to it. At a certain point, it's just like, oh, what value can I provide? That's really the question I really bring into every question now, and every video I do is really just stop thinking and just doing. But if I have like the bare bones there, then I pretty much have it there. Like I don't have to do much, to be honest. I need to like what I'm doing, because at the end of the day, this is still on top of my day-to-day, on top of my day job, on top of my cat sitting, which actually makes more money than YouTube, to be honest. And I just have I've lost a lot of income streams, particularly because of my current job. So I have to enjoy what I'm doing. I'm not just going to do this anymore just for the sake of doing it. I'm actually so close to 10,000 subscribers. So I'm this close. So please subscribe if you haven't already. The fourth personal reason, lesson that I learned is something I actually learned a little bit later in my 20s, is something that was a little bit harder to accept. But that's actually, you will lose friends. And this is something that like when you go to college, you're going to always be with each other out of convenience because you're all in the same campus. It's easy. But then at a certain point when you graduate, you go to different cities, even countries, you're in different walks of life. Some people get married, some people have kids, some people like go do something completely different than you, where now you just lose out of touch. Like this is just something that happens. I used to be the type of person that's like, it can be possible to keep them no matter what you do, and I always really try. But if the other person's not willing to do it, or they're just not in that mental or emotional capacity, you will lose them, unfortunately. It does take work. It's not as easy as when you're in college, where you're there by convenience, there by the same age range. You do have to actually make an effort in your 20s. It's actually partially the reason why I got a dog, but that's besides the point. But that's just something I had to learn in my 20s. I even worked with my therapist on this, because I was like, I could not accept that I could lose friends. I thought it was like, oh, you know, like seasons. You drift apart and you come back together. But no, there's times where you like literally will lose friends. And that's something that I had to learn in my 20s, later in my 20s too, because I just could not accept it. My last one was be intentional with everything you do. I learned this earlier on, especially with my career and especially with my life, because I wanted to make sure that whatever I do wasn't going to be something I will regret. So everything I did was something that, like, will I appreciate this? Will my future self appreciate this? Will I enjoy this? Do I enjoy my time with these people? Just to, instead of doing things for the sake of other people, I started to do things for the sake of myself, and I was very clear about what that was. I didn't want to just be like, oh, you know, I just like being with these people because I don't want to say no. That's not something that I like to do. I like to just go because I want to be there. It's intentional. I don't like, yes, there are some times where you're like, YOLO is great because you want to just enjoy life. But at the same time, I want to be intentional. Like, am I doing this because I want to do it and not because other people want me to do it? But also in general, like, I don't want to just YOLO everything. But at the same time, I do want to leave some room to YOLO. But that's just me being intentional to be YOLO. I'm not just doing it for the sake of doing it, not thinking about it. Like, that's why I've never done drugs. I guess if you count caffeine, that doesn't really count. But if I don't do drugs. I don't really drink. I don't smoke or anything like that. I'm being intentional with my life, personally, professionally, socially as well. Those are my personal lessons I learned. Now I'm going to go into professional. So this goes along to what I've said earlier, which is like, you don't have to stick to the same job. And I've been telling this actually to a lot of people that started out in their very first job. My friend has been telling me this for a very long time, and I got very stubborn. I was like, oh, I like where I'm at Accenture. I got everything I want. I don't know what the issue is. But then when I started interviewing, and I'm like, wow, I wish I did this earlier. Like, I could have found my value somewhere else, and I could have opened doors for places I did not expect to open doors. Like, for example, I didn't even know solutions architect or solutions consultant was a thing at tech companies. I thought they were just things you only get at consulting firms. That was a big lesson that I learned. Once I did learn that, I started to pursue those roles, and now I'm in where I am, and I'm actually closer to where I want to be in my career because I wanted to get that product impact. And this goes into the second lesson that I learned, which is actively network even if you're not looking for a job. And this is something that I learned later on as well when I was moving from Accenture to Google, because I really thought like, oh, I could just network when I'm looking for a job. No, networking is a very constant thing. You need to maintain relationships you started. You also need to be open for connections as well too, because at a certain point, there's a lot of people that are going to message you on LinkedIn. There's going to be people like, hey, Christine, I would love to chat with you. Sometimes you have to like actually be okay with it. You should not just accept it for the sake of accepting it because you're looking for a job. You should just be thinking about like, how do I expand my network? And I have done that intentionally as well within like the BU community. Like, I'm on the Questrom Alumni Council, YQL they call it. And so I also am reaching out to Phi Chi Theta alumni. I'm also reaching out to people that I've used to worked with and just ask them and catch up with them. And talk to them about their careers, about their personal lives. I'm not always talking about their careers. This is actually the time where you want to talk about their personal lives. If you're not actively looking for a role, then by the time you're there, you're not awkwardly asking them about the roles. So I would say that you should actively be networking. You don't have to network in the way where you're like looking for a job, but you should be actively networking to expand. So what I've done at Google particularly was I looked at what roles I was somewhat interested in, and then I reached out to them and I chatted with them, even unintentionally. Like, there's times where I bump into someone in the office and I'm like, oh, can you tell me a little bit about your role? Like, what do you actually do? Can you like break it down for me? Because sometimes I work with them, but I don't actually know what they do because I never take the time to listen. And when you do that, you not only are being a better networker, you're also being a better collaborator, because when you learn about what other people are doing, you get to start to see connections to what you can do with your work and even less shared learning. So I personally think actively networking goes both ways. It's not just necessarily looking for jobs, but it's also improving your job as well. My third one is really your personal brand is very important, and work on it every single time. So this is something that I knew was important. I just didn't know how important it was. Personal brand, I always thought was just like my actions speak for myself. That is somewhat the case. It's not all the case though. Actions do speak for yourself. So a lot of times I'm known as the one that's like really focused on culture and offsites and activities and belonging. And I try to do more social activities. I'm the one that always volunteers to do things for fun, has no merit whatsoever. But I'm also supposed to focus on my personal brand professionally as well, in terms of sending out emails of what I've done, packaging it up, or pitching it out in there, or like making a lasting impact in the ecosystem by my work and by sharing my work. Not necessarily just showing my work, but sharing my work as well. And it has been very uncomfortable, let me tell you that, because I'm Asian and I'm an Asian woman. So a lot of Asians, they don't like to brag about themselves, and a lot of Asian women feel awkward about bragging themselves too. And I've always been told to just like hush hush, have my work recognized for myself. But this was something I really had to get out of my box. So I'm really glad that I had my manager, Claire, at this time to really push me there. She would make me like, oh, Christine, can you write an email to so-and-so about this? Let me help you write it. And then I start to get in the habit of writing it, and I get in the habit of like, this is something I should do. So I got to the point where I'm like, maybe I should send that email out. And I ask my manager, like, do you think I should send that out? And I'm like, yes. So I've gone to that point where I got proactive. It is helping me in multiple different ways. So it helps your work get noticed. It also helps getting, in the case that you're trying to go for a promotion, it helps your promotion case, because now people that are deciding on your promotion hear about your work as well. So you get the morale up of the work that you do personally and professionally. So they like you more. And you may even want to be the one that they think about when certain opportunities come as well. So this is the part where it's like number 4, make career moves, not change jobs. So this is something that was related to my Accenture to Google move. This was something that I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do it, not for the sake of just getting a better job, getting pay. I was very intentional. Like, I did a bunch of informational interviews just to see, is this the career move for me? But I do also want to make a caveat. This is not the time to just constantly be paralyzed by all the decisions and all the paralysis analysis that you make. Sometimes you do need to find that fine line of like making that career move versus just doing it, and being researched about. So for me, making the career moves is really just be very intentional about like why you're doing this and what is next. But it be opened though about like what are the opportunities that could pop up. Because when I went to Google, I thought, oh, I'm going to be a product manager. No, that ended up not happening. I actually don't want to be product manager anymore. And so when I was in this role, I realized like I actually want to do something like product operations manager, or something that's different that I've never heard of before, because people hear about PM, people hear about consultant, they don't know any other roles, to be honest, when it comes to the business tech role, like maybe data scientist or data analyst or anything like that. So there's a lot of roles that are out there that you just don't know about. And when I joined Google, that's when I realized like, oh, there's actually a lot of roles I wasn't aware of. And now I get to do this networking where I learn about those said roles. So when the role does come out, I can actually talk about it and learn about it, and I could be prepared when that time comes. Personally, I think I'm at a good place right now. I like where I'm at right now. My goal is get promoted right now. And then from there, see how I feel. Do I want to stay in this role, or do I want to just get promoted again? And so be very intentional where your career moves. You want to make sure you're just not doing, I guess it's not completely wrong to just do it for the money, but I also think you shouldn't do it just for the money, because money will only get you so far. You also want to make sure that it's something that's advancing you and your career just a little bit towards the direction you want. You don't want to go against the direction you want just for the money. It could also mean for many personal reasons though. Like for example, if you want to take a step back to be able to be with your family, or be able to travel, or to be able to stay home more. There's so many different ways you can do that, but just be intentional and not just do things because like, oh, like this next big thing that's popping up, because there's going to be so many other next big things and you don't want to just always pop that up. The very last thing is really, it's okay to take a step back and take a breather. For me particularly, I just kept on going like bam, bam, bam when it comes to Accenture. And then at a certain point, I was like doing the same thing with Google. But then I learned to take a step back with really evaluating like, what do I actually like? What do I actually like doing what I'm doing? I don't always have to be doing everything at the same time. I could just be enjoying what I'm doing right now, really taking it in, learning everything I could possibly learn, and then move forward from there. So really take that step back instead of just constantly going on, which is still good, especially in your 20s. But I think it's also good to sometimes take a step back and really evaluate where your priorities are. And that's where I'm at right now, is really just like, I could get promoted and do like a manager role, or I could go do some different role. But right now I've just taken a step back, focusing on my current role, making sure I'm really killing it when I am, and making sure that I actually take a step back, because there will be seasons out there where maybe my personal life will take precedent, or maybe my professional life will take precedent. And now, like, I have a dog, so there's certain things that will take precedent, but I'm also making sure I have my non-negotiables, that I'm like, my client work will not suffer, my happiness will not suffer, my health and safety will not suffer. I will make it work, but it's okay to take a step back or dial it back a little bit. You're not taking a step back, you're just dialing it back a little bit to a lower intensity, but not fully non-intensive, you know? So those were the lessons I learned in my 20s. So 5 personal, 5 professional. If you're in your 20s right now, what are lessons that you've learned in your 20s? And what are lessons that you think that you will learn in the future, or hopefully you're trying to learn in the future? Because it's a very easier said than done to be like, yeah, I want to learn this lesson, but you're not actually learning it. You're not actually doing it. So let me know down below in the comments down below.